Very glad for that. Ed Rabinowitz is a communications professor at Lehigh Carbon Community College and the author of 2 nonfiction books. And ahead of time, they were running some of your video clips, and I got a little preview, and it looks really fascinating. I think we're in for some really interesting stuff, so don't fall asleep. Here's Ed.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. Pleasure to be here with you today. The words listening with our eyes is very, very important. It gets at the heart of nonverbal communication. I'm going to be, I should forewarn you that I'm going to run this session a little bit like I run my college classrooms, and that means it's somewhat interactive. I'm going to be soliciting some volunteers periodically, so that doesn't mean everybody should move to the back now. Please stay where you are. But I'm very much a believer that to fully learn and to fully understand and appreciate things, I don't want to stand here and just talk at you for 60 minutes. I'm going to talk, but you're going to experience a little bit as well. The session, and by the way, I will save some time at the end for questions, but feel free at some point if there's a topic I bring up and you're not certain about it, or you want to contribute something based on a personal experience that relates to what we're talking about with nonverbal communication, by all means, please do so. The impact of nonverbals, culture and the communication process. That word culture, I tell my students in classes that when we talk about culture, when I'm teaching intercultural communication, that it's all too easy to think of culture as, well, I'm an American, or I'm from Japan, or I'm from Mexico. And culture is so much more than just that. I had my first exposure to culture many, many years ago when I was working for Volkswagen of America, doing public relations for them. And I was moved from my beloved New York City out to Detroit, Michigan. And that was a culture shock right off the bat. And I guess I'd been living there about 2, maybe 3 weeks. And we decided we wanted to order a pizza one night. So there was a little strip mall up the road from us. Went to the phone, got the phone number, phoned, and the guy picked up the phone. I said, hi, I'd like to order a large pie. And he said, excuse me? And I said, a large pie. I'd like to order a large pie. This went around and around for a little while, with him finally saying, I think you have the wrong number. This is not a bakery. Yeah, I know. I'm calling the pizza place. I'd like a large. And eventually realizing that pie to them is completely foreign. It's a different culture. The same word means different things. So that was my first clue, that when we say culture, it's not just what nationality you are. It's what city you're from, what state you're from. It's what household you grew up in. I grew up in a Jewish household in the Bronx. That's a culture, okay? That's different than somebody who grew up in an Irish Catholic household on Staten Island or in Brooklyn. Completely different culture. And I have the battle scars to prove it. So I'm going to take you through talking about culture, but more specifically talking about nonverbals. Because nonverbal communication is so critical and such an important element to all communication, certainly in healthcare. And then it takes on even more prominence when we translate it over to the nonverbal side and to the aspect about culture. So let me move forward and sort of ask this rhetorical question: what's so important about nonverbal communication? And to begin to help answer that, I would like 3 volunteers. Okay, 1 right here. That hand went up too fast. 2, 3. Come on up. And you can just stand right here and face the audience. Right over here, and right over here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is think about something that has recently happened to you. Pleasant experience, sad experience, funny experience, real short, real brief story that you would like to relate to the audience? I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. Just nod when you've got in your head what you think you want to say. All set? Okay, good. Now, I'm going to start over here, and I apologize. Your name is? Anne. I'm going to start with Anne. Anne is going to tell you this short story. However, what Anne doesn't know is that Anne is going to do this without using any nonverbal communication. Now, that means no facial expressions, no arm movements or gestures, nothing. Anne is going to tell this story. Now, you're all going to help out, because when you see Anne use some type of nonverbal communication, I want you to yell out, stop. Okay? You tell us when you're ready, Anne. Okay, go ahead.
After 40 years of teaching, I retired. And then 4 years after that, I was ordained as a minister in the United Church of Christ. That was a very exciting.
Stop. Okay, stay where you are. Your name? Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle, you have your story set?
It's hard for me, I'm Italian.
I don't understand. I'm a New York Jew. I understand. Okay. Same guidelines, though. No nonverbal communication at all. Ready?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a 21-year-old son who goes to school in LTRC and also works at McDonald's, and he quit his job because they weren't giving him enough hours. He wanted 40 hours.
Good. Very good. Okay. Stay where you are. And your name, please. Marianne. Okay. Same guidelines. You ready? Good.
I recently had the opportunity in the past few months to have my first 2 books published and also to get a monthly.
Okay. Now that you see how difficult it can be, I don't want to leave you frustrated. Please tell your story normally and with any gestures you would like to use.
My first retirement was from 40 years of teaching. And after those 40 years, I had 1 year off, went to seminary, and from seminary, it's finally been almost a full year since graduation that I was ordained on Sunday. I'm just very frustrated because I have a 21-year-old son who thinks that if he doesn't get enough hours, he should quit his job instead of trying to find another job. I just, as I said, had 2 books recently published in the past 3 months, and I'm also now a contributing editor to an Eastern Christian magazine. So it's been a very exciting time for me the past 3 months, and I'm grateful to God, my dad as an inspiration, my writing teachers, my colleagues, and my publisher for all these.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so we begin to answer the question, what's so important about nonverbal communication? All 3 of these very nice people did not get very far before you yelled stop in telling their stories without using some form of nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is a key part of communicating. How key is it? Well, 93% of all communication is nonverbal. That sounds high, but it's not. As I tell my students, if you walk into the classroom and you're wearing a sweatshirt that says Lehigh University or Boston Red Sox or whatever it may be, you are telling me something non-verbally. If you walk into the classroom and you are very proud of the paintings, the tattoos on your arm, you are telling me something non-verbally. By the middle of the semester, in fact, even sooner than that, when my students come into the classroom, I can tell who's having a good day or a bad day based on their facial expressions and body language. So nonverbal communication tells us a lot. And again, not just by body language and by movement. 93%, okay? And voice tones is a big part, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, because then it gets at not just what you are saying, but how you are saying things. Okay, again, what's so important about nonverbal communication? Nonverbal behavior communicates the relational aspect of the messages, how we really feel about someone or something. This is very prominent in the healthcare field. Must have been about 6 months ago. I had to go back to dermatologist for a checkup. I'd had a little bit of a mole removed from my forehead, and we talked about what I was doing and proceeding with the right treatment and everything. And at one point, the surgeon, we were talking, and I was sitting on the little chair there, and she's talking, and she said, "Good job," and she touched me on the shoulder. And I never realized how important that touch was. It said something to me about the relationship between me and this doctor, that she really did care about me as a patient, as an individual. And so that aspect about nonverbal behavior, we do that at times of grief. Somebody has lost a loved one, someone close to them. And I think we've all experienced that loss of words and really the cliches. I'm so sorry, I'm sorry for your loss. Sometimes words, what can we say? But a hug, a look in the eyes, sometimes says so much more than words could ever say. So that's what we mean by nonverbal behavior communicates the relationship aspect of messages. Don't interpret nonverbal behaviors in isolation. Think context. In what situation is the communication happening? Because that's critical also. Okay? It's not just who you're talking to, it's what is the circumstance, surroundings, and so on. All that is important when you're interpreting nonverbal behaviors. And the challenge in interpreting nonverbal behavior is that it's very ambiguous. It's much harder to understand somebody's sometimes facial expressions depending on the culture they're from, sometimes silence. Silence in one culture means something totally different in a different culture. In the US, we think when you're being silent, that's being rude. You should be talking. I'm asking you a question. In other countries, in other cultures, silence is preferred as far as communication. Okay, again, what's so important about nonverbal communication? Let's talk a little bit about, and actually I want to show you a clip about the cultural variations. Not even talking, okay? We do things in this country, in our national US culture, that is so different from meaning-wise from other cultures. Simple hand gestures that we take for granted if we were to encounter folks of another culture or travel to another country that mean completely opposites. And if you did them, you would not only highly insult somebody, but you might start a fight. Would you roll that?
Hand jive. The top 7 common American hand gestures that can get you in trouble abroad. In the US, the thumbs up sign means well done, or is commonly used by hitchhikers. But don't use it in Greece, Russia, Sardinia, or West Africa, because you'll be insulting the recipient with a hearty up yours. Many people use this sign to denote victory or peace in America. But use it in Great Britain, Australia, Ireland, or New Zealand, and you'll basically be dropping the F-bomb. Be careful with this. In the US, this sign means everything is hunky-dory. But in Russia, Brazil, Turkey, and the Mediterranean, it means something very different. Something along the lines of, you are a homosexual. In France and Belgium, it means the recipient is a worthless zero. If you're in Greece, don't tell someone to stop by also holding up your hand, palm out and all 5 fingers at attention. You'd be telling them to go straight to hell. Jenna Bush was televised flashing this symbol in Norway to show her pride for Texas, not realizing that she was inadvertently telling the entire Mediterranean that their spouses were being unfaithful. The sign means cuckold and is popular in Spain, Portugal, Greece, Colombia, Brazil, Albania, and Slovakia. If you go to the Philippines, whatever you do, don't tell someone to come here by curling your finger forward and motioning repeatedly, unless you want to get arrested. is considered to be a gesture befitting only usage on a dog and is punishable with jail time if used on a person. Placing both hands out, palms down, fingers outstretched to settle a crowd or to tell people to wait is commonplace in the US. But in Greece, it means eat So be careful using those 7 hand gestures abroad. For more information, please visit www.pimsleurapproach.com, the leaders in audio-based language learning.
Something that I recently learned, I'm not certain yet, I haven't gotten final word, but I may have an opportunity this summer to teach 2 weeks worth of communication courses, short courses, to undergrad and graduate students in China. And yeah, I'm like holding my breath because I'm supposed to know by the early part of April, and we know that April's around the corner. But it was recently explained to me that, well, if you do go, don't sit with your leg crossed like that if you're facing anybody. And I happen to do that as a habit a lot. We all probably do, sit with our legs crossed. It's a very strong sign of disrespect to show the bottom of your shoe in Asian cultures. So again, things that you would never think about, but non-verbally mean something totally different in other cultures.
How does that work as far as sign language, though?
Well, sign language itself is a language, so that's universal. So it's understood that if, as opposed to, well, one symbol as opposed to a multitude of symbols. Important to understand, too, when we talk about nonverbal communication, sign language is not considered nonverbal because sign language is a language. It is linguistic based. So sign language is not considered nonverbal. Good question. Okay, cultural variations in nonverbal behavior. Let me talk to you about some of the different variations that we don't think about meaning different things non-verbally, but they do. Paralanguage. Paralanguage has to do with not what we're saying, but how we are saying this. Our speech rate, volume, pitch, tone, all of that can change the meaning of the message if the words stay the same. For example, take 4 words. May I help you? Okay? If I say that, may I help you? I'm being very nice to somebody and offering my assistance. If I say, can I help you? Or may I help you? I'm condescending to them. If I say, may I help you? That's a whole different come on right there. Same 4 words. Totally different meaning based on tone and pitch. That's called paralanguage. Personal space, or what we call proxemics. And this is one of my favorites. We're actually going to do a little exercise on this in a little while. Proxemics has to do with the size of our personal bubble. We all have this space around us, this personal space. And we don't want that space invaded. Only certain people we allow within certain parameters there. And in different cultures, there's a contact zone where personal space is violated regularly, and that's fine. In others, it's not. And in the US, we are, for the most part, we like to keep that distance, that personal bubble of space around us. So I'm going to ask if you would roll that second clip.
What'll we do? Yeah?
It's us.
Come on up. Elaine, you don't have a problem with her, do you?
We adore Elaine.
She wants to say hi. She's with her new boyfriend.
What's he like?
He's nice, bit of a close talker.
A what?
You'll see. Well, I really had no idea that you felt this way about the Costanzas.
They're exhausting. It's like being in an asylum.
This is Erin.
Hello, Aaron.
Hello, Aaron. So how long are you folks in town?
3 more days, and then we're off to Paris.
We're going with the Select Charter Group.
I love France. I was just there last year. In fact, you know, I still have an envelope full of French francs. I'll give them to you.
We can't take money.
Oh, no, it's a gift from us.
Oh, that is so nice, Aaron. Isn't he nice? So listen, has Jerry been showing you a good time?
No, I haven't.
You know, I have a friend who works at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. How'd you like a behind-the-scenes tour?
Really? You could do that?
Easily.
It wouldn't be any trouble?
Of course not. How about right now?
I'm ready. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, let me get my coat.
Elaine, what do you say?
Well, I don't think so, Aaron. I have plans.
Oh. How about you, Jerry? I'm sorry. Sure. Could examine the artwork up close.
Maybe I'll try and catch up with you.
All right, we're off.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a good time.
Bye.
See everybody later.
Okay.
I am still so thankful that reruns of that show are on TV. And it doesn't matter how many times I watch it, I still laugh. And I actually use lots of segments of this in my different types of communication classes because there's so much about interpersonal communication and relationships in his particular shows. Okay, so again, this personal space that we all have. And depending on how close or distant you are to an individual will determine how you let them into that personal space. That speaks volumes. Eye contact. Eye contact, I'll write this word up here for you. Oculesics. O-C-U-L-E-S-I-C-S. Oculesics is the study of how the eyes communicate. I'm dating myself, but that's okay. If you think back to the 1970s, a group called the Eagles, they're coming to do one of the first concerts at the new arena in Allentown, did a song called Lying Eyes. And what does the chorus say? You can't hide your lying eyes. And it's true. The eyes say so much. So the eyes will tell us sadness, happiness, joy, sorrow, all different things. So oculesics is how we communicate by way of the eye. Shaking hands, totally different nonverbal message that's transmitted. Light and quick in France, firm and brisk in Germany. Another one, another term that I'll jot down up here real fast, has a lot to do with healthcare. And I alluded to it before, is called Haptics, H-A-P-T-I-C-S. Haptics is the study of touch. And I felt it when that dermatologist surgeon put her hand on my shoulder and made a connection in that respect. Studies have shown that when physicians have to deliver news to patients, whether it's bad news or good news, that news and the way it's taken and interpreted, the nonverbal aspect by coming in, sitting down with the patient, maybe sitting on the edge of their bed, putting a hand on their arm, and talking with them communicates so much and makes a nonverbal connection that words could probably never do. Now, I caution people, and especially my students, don't run around the campus touching everybody saying, I want to make a connection with you, because that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. But the point being that we need to understand the importance of touch in nonverbal communication and the messages that that can potentially send. Okay, different gestures. We saw some of them on the clip before. There are emblems. These are different categories. Emblems, we wave goodbye. These have meaning in different cultures. Illustrators, like talking with our hands. We had 3 wonderful participants up here before talking with their hands. I talk with my hands. I think if I was tied down like that, I'd go crazy within 5 minutes. Regulators, like turn talking, okay? Regulators guide a conversation with our eyes, with a nod of our head, indicating whose turn it is to talk. All of that is nonverbal. And adapters, that are related to managing our emotions, the way we adapt to different situations, to control our emotions in certain circumstances. Those are all nonverbal as well. Cultural space says a lot non-verbally about us to other people. I experienced that when I moved to Michigan. Our home, our physical living space, says a lot about us non-verbally, our social class, our identity. Quite a number of years ago, I'm sorry.
When you were talking about touch, you reminded me that this is not just national cultures, but that people who are in AA or in recovery are very huggy people. People who have been sexually or physically abused don't want you to touch them. You have to ask permission.
Absolutely. And you remind me, thank you, very good point. Healthcare professionals probably experience this. It's something that I talk about with my teaching colleagues a lot, that we go through with regard to haptics and to touch. At least once a semester, I will be communicating with a student. More often than not, female, but not always. And quite often, a very good student who is having a problem. Something outside of the classroom, something that's going on in their personal lives. We all have lives outside the classroom. And they are communicating to me their frustration. They're opening and telling me what's going on in their lives and why they're having some problems and why they might need a couple of extra days on an assignment. And in the course of sitting in my office and them telling me this, they break down. And what can I do as an instructor? Nothing but sit and listen. The tendency is to want to give them a hug or even just, it'll be okay. I'll work with you, we'll get it done, you'll get through it, everything will be fine. We can't do it because the society that we live in today says, you don't touch. And that's something that, again, that aspect of haptics, it can be very therapeutic. It can convey some very important nonverbal messages, but we have to understand, like was pointed out, who we are interacting with.
I would disagree with you. There are things that you can do. You can give her a napkin, you can give her a box of Kleenex, you can say, would you like something from here, which would also indicate a sense of understanding.
I do. I always offer. If somebody cries, I'm offering them a tissue or something of that nature, and I can speak, but there's not a whole lot I can do non-verbally. And to some extent, I think that ties our hands. The non-verbal aspect, if you understand the relationship with the student that you're talking to. I'll give you another example. Last May, actually before last May, I had a male student who was thinking about not going to graduation. And I said, why? I mean, you've been here for 2.5 years, you've worked hard, why would you not want to go to graduation? And he said, oh, the cost and this and that and whatever. And I said, I think you're making a mistake. I think you really ought to go. Well, his girlfriend heard that he wasn't going to go, and she said, no, you're going. And I don't care what it costs, you're going. As it turns out, there was no cost because it's part of your tuition that you're paying over the course of the years that you're at the college. So it's free, and the cap and gown is free. You get to keep it. So he goes to graduation. I see him during the ceremony, and he was actually in the first row of students, and I was in the back row of the faculty. So as the faculty are marching out, I gestured to him, I'll see you outside, I'll talk to you outside. He said, okay. I see him outside, he's got his girlfriend, his parents, some other family standing around. I went over to him, and I said, so, congratulations. He shakes my hand, collapses against me, and begins to cry. And I'm standing there like, okay, because this is something that we call emotional contagion, where it's like a virus, it's like a disease, but on a good sense, where the emotion is transmitted from one person to the other. So I put my arms around him, tried to make a little light of the situation and said, are you glad you came to graduation? And all that did was open the dam even more, and he really started to cry. But it was a great moment for this student that had taken 7 classes with me over 2.5 years, and who I felt very close to, and now I communicate with on Facebook, because I won't do that while they're a student. But that aspect of being able to engage in a touch, in a haptics type moment, I think conveyed more between us then in those, I don't know, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, than maybe we had communicated in 2.5 years of being together. So again, I say haptics communicates a lot, but as people pointed out very accurately, you have to balance that with understanding the relational aspect of the communication. Okay, again, cultural space, our home, says a lot about us. How are we doing on time? Okay, good. Says an awful lot about us. A number of years ago, my sister-in-law had been divorced and was selling her home. And she had 2 children at home, a son and a daughter. The son was about 18 at the time, my nephew. And we went over one day, and they had the for sale sign out in front. And the grass had to be 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet high. And I turned to my wife and I said, they're never going to sell the place like this. Anybody with a brain is going to drive up, see that, and say, well, if they let the lawn go, what are they doing to the inside? And that wasn't the case. It was actually well taken care of, but perception is reality. So home and the way we keep our living space says a lot about us non-verbally. The neighborhood, the area that we choose to live in, segregation, that says a lot about us. When I moved to Michigan, very, very funny, I was living out on Long Island, and I'm on the phone with a realtor, and all I know about Detroit and the suburbs and whatever is what I can see on a map. And so I'm picking out places based on, you know, proximity to the office where I'd be working. And I mentioned one particular town, and the realtor says, well, yeah, but you'll be about 30 miles from the nearest synagogue. Okay, and? Well, I just want you to know, you're going to be 30 miles from the nearest synagogue. So that aspect of neighborhood plays a big role in nonverbal communication, what it says about us in terms of what's important to us. Regionalism, loyalty to our country, to an area, flying the flag, cyberspace, our profile photo on Facebook. Facebook members here? Anybody? Okay. See, and that's why the younger people are getting off of Facebook, because all of us old farts are on Facebook, and they don't like that anymore, so they want to get off of Facebook. But the profile photo we put on there, the photo we choose to show of ourselves to the world, basically, is saying a lot about us, non-verbally. Or maybe not saying a lot about us, depending on how honest you are with the photograph that you put up there. Okay, so what's so important about nonverbal communication? We started to answer that earlier on. I want to continue along that line, and I'm going to ask for some volunteers. Not so much one person from every table, but if we could, let's see. Could we get one person from this table and one person from this table? You guys decide. I don't want to be the villain here. Perhaps one person from this table and one person from this table. And then one person maybe from that table back over there and this table over here, or a table nearby. Just want to get 6 people from tables that are somewhat near each other, but a little bit of a distance. So just stand up if you want to volunteer. Okay, great. One brave soul. I see, you all saw what I did to the other 3 people. Now you don't want to volunteer. Okay, we've got 2. Who else? 3. Okay. 4. Okay. 5. I need one more. One more for maybe either over in this area or this area. Oh, do we have 6? Oh, okay, great. Okay, good. All right. I'm going to need to position you a little bit. Let's see. You 2 are almost perfect. If you just want to step out right in line with her, that's great. Okay. I'm going to ask if you wouldn't mind stepping over here, maybe as far back as you can against that chair. Would you come down over here? And try to stay in line with him, but step about as far back as you can. Okay, that'll work. And in the back, let's have, I know I'm probably killing everything with the television cameras there. If you would, this would be good. If you would step over here, and if you would mind coming up, and back up, there you go, perfect. Come on over here. And that's good. Okay. So these are your partners. So I'm going to ask you to face your partner. And what I'm going to ask you to do for about a minute is to talk to your partner. Okay? And if you could back up just a little bit, maybe you two just a little bit. Great. Perfect. I want you to talk to your partner for a minute. You can say anything that you want. Doesn't matter what the topic is. Okay? You can mutual conversation. And what I want the rest of you to do is just watch, observe. You're going to see changes happen as we go through this exercise. Okay? And then we'll talk about it as a group as well as with the participants. Okay? So for about 1 minute, go ahead and talk to each other. Okay, you can stop. Now, what I'd like you to do is to take a good-sized step towards each other. Just one good-sized step. Maybe a little bit, just a drop more. And also maybe just a little bit more in the back. No. You guys were good. In the back, just, good, perfect. Okay, same guidelines. For 1 minute, everybody else observe, talk to each other about anything you want. Okay, you can stop now. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to put one arm out and step forward until the tips of your fingers are touching. And then stop. Same guidelines. 1 minute, talk to each other. Okay, you can stop at this point. And now, one more adjustment. I'm going to ask you to step forward until the tips of your shoes are touching. And now the same guidelines for 1 minute, talk to each other. While the rest of you observe. Okay, I'll put you out of your misery and ask you to stop. Okay, thank you. Now, for those of you who are watching, what did you observe? What you saw, I will tell you, is an example of proxemics, how the distances change. There are 4 key distances with which we communicate. The first one is public, and that's the furthest apart, and that's where they started. And I would imagine that was pretty hard to communicate in terms of hearing each other and so on. And they also spoke louder, so that deals with paralanguage and the tone and the volume they're speaking with. Then they took a step in, and that's called social. They're moving a little bit closer towards each other. They then took another step in till their fingertips were touching, which is called personal. And then they got all the way close together, and some were even dancing. And that's called intimate, from skin touching to 18 inches apart. And traditionally, we only let certain people into that intimate zone. What did you observe nonverbal communication-wise? Body language, facial expressions, gestures. What was apparent to you from watching the changes that were going on?
As I got to the second last one, some were sort of going like this, like it was beginning to be uncomfortable, it seemed.
And it's also a way of kind of like protecting ourselves. Like, just keep back. Just, that's it, no closer than that. Other thoughts on what you may have seen or observed? What I saw right off the bat as you got real close was this gentleman. Your name is? Steve. Steve. This gentleman over here, his face got bright red. He could feel it. That's also part of nonverbal. That's controlling the emotions that we're going through. It's saying to everybody else, oh, he's not comfortable, okay? But as they were talking, they kind of held or touched each other. Did that make it easier?
It felt more comfortable.
Why did it make it more comfortable? But that aspect of haptics, of touch, did, as opposed to having to be that close and just stand like this. I saw a hand.
I noticed the 2 young ladies in the front, as they got toe-to-toe, the young lady on that side, she was physically leaning backwards, and that, she appeared to not be so comfortable in that space. However, when they were just the hand tips apart, that wasn't as apparent.
Right. That length, the hand tips apart, 1.5 to 4 feet, is the most comfortable speaking distance for most people. If we're further apart, we feel like we're shouting. And most of you nearby could hear the conversations. When they got in closer, couldn't hear the conversations anymore. They did not need to speak louder, paralanguage.
And at the distances, they all seem to be somewhat more rigid, and at the interpersonal, or the intimate, they were like rigid. But at the personal space, there was a lot of hand motion and describing things.
Exactly, exactly. You would really get a kick out of watching college students go through this. And I know them as I don't know you, so I pair them up very strategically. And And when you see, and what I do is I pair up two young ladies, one gentleman with a young lady, and then two young men. And it's very, very funny to watch two young men, often these two burly, strapping young 18 or 19-year-olds, having to stand toe-to-toe with each other. Men are uncomfortable doing that. And if you think that this woman was backing away a little bit, you have to see the two college students, the males, toe-to-toe with each other. There is no eye contact at all. And forget about leaning back, they lean to the side. Anything they can do to get away from facing each other. The two women, the two young ladies, invariably make better eye contact. Discomfort at first, but they make better eye contact. And that gets into a whole different subject about from the time when we're little boys, men are taught to be competitive, women are taught to make connections by being the same as. And women look to be the same as and make eye contact, and men look to try to one-up the other one. And if you're looking and feeling uncomfortable face-to-face with another man, you're feeling in a one-down position. And that non-verbally, again, says a lot about how you feel. I've said a lot about nonverbal communication. We've touched on culture. The key point is that everything I've said about nonverbal communication is magnified when you change cultures. Because in some cultures, making eye contact is expected, in others it's not. Silence is golden in some cultures it's not. Personal space. I've had college students say to me, oh yeah, I've had to brief my boyfriend and prepare him. When he's coming over, first time he's meeting my family, I tell him, they're gonna hug you and kiss you to death, and he's not used to that. So that in different cultures. All the nonverbals that we experience within the same culture are even more magnified in different cultures. And when we then convey it over to a healthcare setting, it means a lot. To not just be listening with our ears, but listening with eyes. Because we read what's in somebody else's eyes, or facial expression, or body language, or discomfort, shifting, and so on. All of that will say a lot to us if we focus on and pay attention to that. So I'll open it up to some questions. I welcome.
I just wanted to make a comment on the paralanguage. I had an issue some years ago with a patient, and like most of us who are with elderly patients, there's sometimes hearing loss. So I'm speaking as loud to her. She can't hear me. I'm raising my voice even higher. She still can't hear me. I finally raised it to another pitch, and I give her the information that she needs, because I'm chaplain and patient advocate. I got reported to the nursing supervisor that I went in and was screaming at a woman and yelling at her. The woman, the supervisor, who has a lot lower of a voice than I, went in and at a normal tone was able to communicate everything I said to her without any offense. And the problem was I have a high voice, and her deafness was to my voice level, and she was reading my body language, trying to tell her what I'm trying to tell her.
You're absolutely right. The tone, the pitch of your voice, I mean, it's as basic as my wife and I have a dog. And if we put the dog in the center of the room, she goes to one end and I go to the other, and you really should never do this with a dog because you confuse the heck out of them. But if she stands on one end and calls in her higher voice, and I stand on the other end and I go, stay, the dog stays. The dog doesn't budge. But then we switch it around, and she says stay, and I go, come here, Lucy. And Lucy comes and runs to me. It's also that pitch of the voice. And yeah, you were at a pitch that she couldn't identify with, she couldn't hear well. So yes, paralanguage and it almost can get you in trouble as well, if people don't realize what's going on in the exchange. Other questions?
Recently, I've heard of some research around language in young women, teens through early 30s, who are at the end of all of their sentences raising their voices, and the inflection is up, and the analysis, and I know nothing about this, but I'm, as a rabid feminist, concerned by it, that it really suggests in workplaces and elsewhere
sounds as though it's very tentative.
Yes.
Do you know anything more than that? Because I don't even, I've done some research.
I don't know any relation to studies that may have been done in that area, but you're absolutely right. That raised inflection at the end gives a questioning tone. And it's almost as though, even if you're making a statement about something, yes, it sounds like you're still questioning that statement and waiting for the approval. So being aware of how you are pronunciating, enunciating, and the way you are ending your sentences, yes. Again, I'm not aware of any studies like that, but you're 100% right. That gives a questioning tone at the end, doubt in yourself as to if even what you're saying is accurate. Keep going. Right. She was explaining how she had worked in a dialysis unit, and very loud place to work. And I guess the population in the dialysis unit was almost 100% African American. Was 100% African American. And again, the fact was very loud. And where she's grown up in Philadelphia, if she didn't hear somebody say something, she would say, "What?" to clarify or get them to repeat. And the different culture from the South was, you don't say "what" to somebody. That's very disrespectful. You say, "Excuse me," or "pardon," or that's why we don't interpret nonverbal behaviors in isolation. We have to think of the context. Who are we talking to? What is the situation? We are who we are. We all bring identities to every communication that we have. And I do that. I say things to my students sometimes. I'm 61. I talk to my students who are 18. We're on different planets when it comes to culture. And I will say things that they just look at me and I take for granted, "Well, don't you know how I mean that term?" And they don't. And they will do the same thing to me, and I'll go, "Okay, is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Because you have to think in terms of context. And it's not surprising that, again, the South to the North, totally different cultures. Habits are so ingrained in us to now consciously think about changing the way you speak. It's not an easy change.
It seems like we're moving more and more to also a texting culture and emailing culture. Like whole conversations can happen by email now, but you don't have any nonverbal clues. It's really hard. I kind of put a rule of thumb for myself that the more
Sure. And I'll. Oh, absolutely. The first thing, I have a rule in my classroom is all cell phones are turned off. That if the cell phone goes off or you're checking it while you're in class, your class participation grade goes down. You got to pay attention in a classroom. I'll refrain from getting up on my soapbox about cell phones and things like that and texting, because I think that's, first of all, I think we're destroying the English language with all the texting. But I also think that we're getting very impersonal with regard to interpersonal communication. It's been brought up to me on a couple of occasions, gee, maybe you might want to teach some of these classes online. And my reaction is, teach interpersonal communication online? I want to see these people. You're absolutely right. There is zero tone that you can put into a text message, even email messages. I don't care how many smiley faces and things like that you put in there. You can't read tone into words on a screen. Poorly punctuated words on a screen that don't have the apostrophe for don't. So, in fact, my students write papers on what we call computer-mediated communication, communication that takes place by way of the computer. And I think it's an issue. And some students in my classes get it. They actually agree. We, meaning talking about themselves, 18 and 19-year-olds, we don't know how to communicate face-to-face anymore. And that's not a good thing.
I'm not sure if this is related, but I'm thinking about children who are on the autism spectrum. My understanding is that they don't read facial expressions and they don't take cues. In other words, come here, meaning saying to them. So it's an incredibly difficult.
And I know where you're coming from. I have students over time in my classes, students with autism, with different types of autism. For many of them, we make accommodations. The same types of PowerPoint slides I have here that I might use in a classroom, I will give to them to help get at certain things that I may be covering in a class that they won't understand because of the verbal aspect. So you do need to make accommodations in that respect. You need to know who you're communicating with. I mean, that's always the key.
Just a quick question related to the speaking to someone who has a hearing impairment. Is it better to speak in a lower tone, or does it depend on the individual?
It's always going to depend on the individual. There are some individuals that are going to be very good at reading lips, and you won't have to change tone at all. It's just as long as you're facing them and they're facing you, they can read the lips and they'll pick up on that. All communication is unique, and keep in mind, one thing to leave you with. Every piece of communication has two dimensions. The content, what we're saying, but the relational aspect. So you have to understand who you are communicating with. That's really important. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.